The secret to longevity and vitality is not external. It is not a lotion. It is not a crazy biohack. It is internal, meaning it's all about glucose control and cortisol. And the conventional wisdom has us believing that sugar is the problem. And sugar is not the problem. Sugar is actually medicine in a way that it lowers cortisol. And if you lower cortisol, you lower histamine, you lower serotonin, you lower estrogen, you lower prolactin. And what that does is it is going to increase your thyroid output, which means you can make all of your other sex hormones, because that converts in the liver to make testosterone and the sex hormones. So when it comes to wanting longevity and to seek a youthful appearance, we don't need to slather lotions on our face. We don't need to do these crazy biohacks of red light per se, even though red light does play a role because it activates the melanin in your skin and goes in the retinal hypothalamic tract, which in turn builds your solar callus and it optimizes your mitochondria. But it's not the main thing. The main thing is blood sugar control. So how do we control our blood sugar? And I put together a list here of several factors that are going to be beneficial for you. And the number one thing you can do to improve your blood sugar is not cut out sugar, but it's control the amount of polyunsaturated fatty acids that you consume. Because if you eat a lot of seed oils and chicken, non-ruminant animals that don't have four stomachs, that convert the seeds and grains they eat into stearic acid, what happens is you lower hepcidin in the liver. And that creates unbound iron that oxidizes through the form of hydroxyl radicals, meaning you're going to reduce the amount of energy that you can produce. Your glucose doesn't convert to pyruvate, and you don't make ATP into energy, and the electrons get stuck in the electron transport chain, and we have reductive stress and oxidative damage. So to overcome some of that, once we start eating more ruminant animals and cutting out these seed oils and chicken with linoleic acid, we can take niacinamide, not NAD. NAD in its reduced form ends up causing oxidative damage. So it disrupts glycolysis. But if we take niacinamide, we give ourselves a precursors to make NAD, and that helps reduce reductive stress and convert your glucose into pyruvate, making ATP and improving our thyroid function, making all our sex hormones. And another great tool you can use is baking soda. Baking soda lowers estrogen and prolactin and lactate. So when we lower those functions, we improve our body's ability to make energy. Our glucose converts to pyruvate and we make T3. So when we look at aging, one of the main things to look at is your body temperature and thyroid hormone output, because if we improve that, we know we can make the sex hormones and have that youthful skin and feel energetic. Aspirin is another tool to utilize because aspirin itself lowers cortisol, just like sugar lowers cortisol. And if we lower cortisol levels, we improve glycolysis. Your body utilizes glucose at a more efficient level, and now we make more T3, which means we make more sex hormones. Everything's balanced. It helps regulate the production of testosterone and estrogen and create the balance of DHEA to cortisol. Your cortisol to DHEA ratio is important in looking at longevity. So we want to keep that at an optimal level. We can do a simple saliva test to determine those levels of cortisol to DHEA levels. We want to make sure our cortisol goes through a natural rhythm. When we wake up in the morning, it should be high and then slowly transition lower, not have spikes or low points in the middle of the day. And our thoughts are important when it comes to having a youthful appearance, because if you are negative, and it may not even be yours, it may be inherited epigenetically through the lineage, those negative thoughts, negative belief systems that are there are creating reductive stress. They block the flow of energy through your body. If you don't move electrons efficiently because you're in a negative thought, our thoughts are so powerful, they actually change planetary alignment in galaxies far away. So inverse, when you're negative, the universe is reflecting back to you your perception. So when we have a negative perception, electrons don't move, disease in the mind becomes disease in the body, and your body starts to express symptoms of aging because electrons don't move. Posture is important because when you stretch nerves, they lose function. So if you have bones that have shifted anterior in a position the muscles cannot self-correct, now that tension that's on your brainstem doesn't allow the flow of electrons, and we increase cortisol. And that's what we're trying to modulate to create the longevity and the youthful appearance everyone desires. Again, don't go to the lotions, don't go to the anti-aging supplements. Let's look at how we can improve water, food, rest, exercise, environment, and posture, and our mind. In that, we create true longevity and vitality. And I'm going to leave it right here with the last component, and that is to make sure you're getting enough sun. Sun is important so that you can perform sulfation. Sulfation is an evolutionary process that is needed to make strong protein bonds, to make hormones, to make neurotransmitters, to detox heavy metals. If we don't get the right sun exposure all day long, utilizing the near-infrared light that comes up in the morning and the UVA light that's in the afternoon, what happens is you can't perform that process. Bacteria, yeast, fungus, and mold grow, and now that performs a sulfation for you. Those pathogens perform that because you weren't getting enough sunlight. And now we have overgrowth of bacteria creating reductive stress that leads to aging, poor energy production. Now, we can amplify that and say, okay, well, how are we going to amplify that? Well, if you go outside barefoot and you put your feet in the grass, wow, now all of a sudden we have light water magnetism, our mitochondria spin, and we move the electrons. And we don't get reductive stress, and our hormones now are optimal for anti-aging. Our cortisol DHA level are modulated. 2/3 of our electrons actually come from light, not from food. So it's arguable whether or not sun and going outside, dumping the excess electrons in the ground is more important than the food you eat. So in that, when we know that environment is so important, it's going to behoove you, if you want to live a long, vital life, that you modulate your EMF, your RF frequencies you're getting from your cell phone devices and the Wi-Fi in the house, and get rid of that stuff, or at least get a toroidal coil called an iTorus. It's this silly little device like this, right? You can get on my website, protouchrehab.com, and it changes the energetic frequency of those RF fields so that it renders it harmless to you. But best to just shut it off. And then minimizing the exposure to the blue light, because the blue light does some from your computer and your cell phone devices and your TVs, does something very similar to what these RF frequencies of electromagnetic radiation does as well. So what it does, it steals your bioavailable C to make more melatonin because you have the wrong light spectrum. And now your copper's there. So because your copper now is unavailable, you can't bind that to iron to make hemoglobin, we end up producing the hydroxyl radicals. And that in turn creates reductive stress, doesn't allow the electrons to move, creating aging and poor hormonal production. So when it comes to really seeking out health, longevity, and vitality, it's more complex than just food. And we want to make sure that we're doing the right nutrients in 30, 30% carbs, 30% fat, 30% protein, right? In that factor now, we have the cofactors we need to make hormones. We have the energy production we need from the glucose from our carbohydrates in fruit and honey and non-starch resistant carbs. And you have the protein you need, the amino acids you need to make all the neurotransmitters, to make antioxidants, to create cellular repair, because that's what the ribosome does, is it processes your proteins to repair your DNA. So now the factors to review are NAD. You don't want NAD. Remember, you want niacinamide to push through that process. We don't want to have too much NAD or you disrupt glycolysis. We want to make sure we're taking aspirin to lower our cortisol, to detox out the toxic polyunsaturated fatty acids, which are your seed oils. We want to not be scared of sugar, understanding that it helps you make energy and make thyroid hormone, which helps in turn make your sex hormones. We want to make sure that we're in a positive mindset with our thoughts. We become what we think. Your body is just an avatar. That's it. And your consciousness is driving it. It's the reality you see in front of you that you're creating that actually ages you. It is your posture and correcting that in the right fashion, making sure you don't have tension pulling on your brainstem, creating the reductive stress, and modulating our environment, getting the right sunlight as much as you possibly can, changing the lights in the house so you have full spectrum lighting, making sure that at nighttime you don't have too much light going on, that you're using near infrared light in the house to see, only using natural lighting or incandescent lighting to read. And you want to make sure that you modulate that EMF. You can just hook hard wires of Ethernet up. You don't have to use Wi-Fi in the house.